Welcome to JCPS Workforce Training. Today's course material covers the new globally harmonized system for chemical labeling, or GHS for short. The new GHS provisions have been adopted and incorporated into the revised 1910-1200 Hazard Communication Standard, which deals with the employee's right to know and understand about the hazards posed by chemicals in their workplace. Kentucky OSHA adopted the final rule for the new revised HCS, GHS on May 8, 2012, with the official effective date beginning on August 31, 2012. GHS is the new system for identifying and communicating chemical hazard information throughout the world. By adopting the GHS of classification and labeling of chemicals and training workers, every country will now have the same uniform hazard warning information system that allows everyone the right to understand about the safe transportation, use and storage of chemical products. OSHA definitions. Chemical. OSHA has decided to continue using chemical to indicate both substances and mixtures. Hazardous chemical means any chemicals, substances and mixtures, which are classified as a physical hazard, a health hazard, a simple asphyxiant, combustible dust, pyrophoric gas, or hazard not otherwise classified. HNOCs. Hazard not otherwise classified means an adverse physical or health effect, identified through evaluation of scientific evidence, during the classification process that does not meet the specified criteria for the physical and health hazard classes addressed in this section. 1910-1200. Under GHS, chemical classification is now determined by using scientific data and research regarding the chemicals' known hazardous properties and the inherent hazard risk it represents to humans or the environment. There are 3 classification categories for chemicals under the new GHS. Number 1, physical hazards. Think of it as any hazardous chemical, substance or mixture, likely or capable of causing outward physical danger or harm. Examples are flammables or explosives. Number 2, health hazards. Think of this as any hazardous chemical, substance or mixture, capable of causing physiological harm to a person, whereby an exposure, inhalation, absorption, ingestion or injection to such hazardous chemicals can result in some harm occurring to the body. Number 3, environmental hazard, which under the GHS means any hazardous chemical that if spilled or released into a waterway would be toxic to aquatic life. GHS pictograms. Under the GHS, pictograms are symbols that are intended to convey specific hazard warning information regarding a particular chemical product. Pictograms are used on chemical labels when chemicals meet classification criteria. Under any of the hazard categories identified by the GHS, a corresponding pictogram must be printed on the chemical label. Pictograms may be found on safety data sheets. The pictograms or symbols based on specific chemical hazards may appear on the SDS in Section 2. Alternately, specific hazard statement information may also appear on Section 2 of the SDS. There are 9 new universal harmonized pictograms that may be found on a chemical product you will need to know about. Pictograms by hazard grouping. If a hazardous chemical, substance or mixture represents a physical hazard to a worker, it will be listed and identified on the chemical label as one of the 5 GHS pictograms you see above. Explosive. Flame. Flame over circle. Compressed gases. Corrosive to metal. If a hazardous chemical, substance or mixture represents a health hazard to a worker, it will be listed and identified on the chemical label as health. Skull and crossbones. Exclamation mark. Corrosive to skin and eyes. Hazardous to aquatic environment. Category and level of hazard. As stated, under the new GHS requirements for labeling of hazardous chemicals, pictograms will be required on all chemical labels. It's important to remember Additional hazard statement information can be found in the new safety data sheet format in Section 2. Here is an example of a pictogram for flames shown on Section 2 of a safety data sheet. Below this pictogram is corresponding hazard statement information. For each hazard statement there will be a corresponding category rating, so as to alert the user as to what level of hazard the product represents. As you'll notice under the GHS category rating system for hazards, a Category 1 equals severe hazard and Category 5 equals a minimal hazard. More about explosive pictogram. Under GHS, an explosive substance, or mixture, is a solid or liquid which is in itself capable by chemical reaction of producing gas, at such a temperature and pressure and at such a speed as to cause damage to the surroundings. Subcategories under the explosive pictogram includes explosives. Examples are TNT, dynamite, black powder, ammonium nitrate, fuel oil. Self-reactive chemicals. Unstable chemicals very sensitive to friction, movement, temperature and pressure change. Can result in sudden explosion. Example, nitroglycerin. Organic peroxides, represents severe fire and explosion hazards. Examples, plastics and rubber industries are the heaviest users of organic peroxides, for substances such as activators, accelerators, curing agents, hardeners, etc. More about flame pictogram. Includes all readily combustible substances and mixtures. Subcategories found under the flame pictogram includes flammable gases, aerosols, liquids and solids that can burst into flames easily. Also, listed under the flame pictogram are self-heating, self-reacting and pyrophoric materials. Self-heating chemicals are classified as any substance or mixture, solid or liquid, where the gradual reaction of that substance or mixture with oxygen and air generates heat. In order to self-heat, the material must generate more heat than it loses to the environment. Self-reacting chemicals are any substances or mixtures that are capable of undergoing chemical reactions and molecular changes when subjected to certain conditions like movement or shock, temperature or pressure changes. Self-reacting and unstable chemicals are capable of causing fire and explosions. Under the GHS, a chemical is said to be pyrophoric if a small quantity of the material will ignite within 5 minutes after coming into contact with atmospheric oxygen. More about flame over circle pictogram. Oxidizers are substances or mixtures that may, generally by yielding oxygen, cause or contribute to the combustion of other material. Oxidizers appear in various forms: gas, liquids, solids, granular, powder. Examples are O2 gas, bleach, chlorine peroxides, pool chemicals, fertilizers, nitrates. Oxidizers must not be stored around flammable combustible products. Refer to sections 2, 7 and 10 on SDS. More about gas cylinder pictogram. Gases under pressure can explode, rocket out of control and harm people if they are heated, ruptured or leaking. Many compressed gases are toxic or very toxic. They could cause various health problems depending on the specific gas, its concentration, the length of exposure and the route of exposure. Contact with liquefied gases in liquid form can freeze the tissue and result in a burn-like injury. Under the GHS, the gas cylinder pictogram includes 4 groups of gases: compressed gases, liquefied gases, refrigerated gases, dissolved gases. Main hazards are combustion, explosion, toxicity, poisonous gas, asphyxiation. Some gases deplete O2 in air and can lead to suffocation, cause freezing and burn-like injuries. Projectile. Also, found in Section 2. Hazard identification on SDS. More about corrosive pictogram symbol. Can be used on a chemical label to describe either a physical hazard and/or health hazard. Highly corrosive and can damage or destroy metal once outside of original container. Corrosive to skin and will damage soft tissue and cause serious burns. corrosive to eyes and can cause irreversible eye damage. Also, found in Section 2. Hazard identification on SDS. Health hazard pictogram symbol. Exposure to hazardous chemicals or agents can cause internal harm to the body. Prolonged exposure to hazardous chemicals may cause health problems such as cancer or birth defects. The subcategories and effects listed below the symbol include: respiratory sensitizer, can cause severe respiratory response, coughing, difficulty breathing, throat tightening, etc. Mutagenicity, can damage human cells, cause tumor growth and alter human genetic material DNA. Carcinogens, can cause cancer. Reproductive toxicity, can cause birth defects. Target organ failure, lead to liver, kidney failure. Aspiration toxicity, can cause liquid and fluid to develop in lungs and disruptibility to breathe and circulate oxygen into our bloodstream and throughout the body. Also, found in Section 2. On SDS. Exclamation mark pictogram symbol. The exclamation mark includes any hazardous chemical capable of causing immediate, acute harmful effect upon the body over a short period of time, and whereby full recovery is expected. Such type of exposures to hazardous chemicals may cause stomach discomfort, accompanied by nausea and vomiting, trigger allergic reactions, cause skin and eye irritations, or produce stimulant effects on the brain or lead to respiratory irritations. Skull and crossbones. Acute toxicity describes the adverse effects of a substance that result either from a single exposure or from multiple exposures in a short span of time, usually less than 24 hours. The LD50, LC50 refers to the dose or concentration amount of a chemical given to the test group of animals that resulted in 50% of test population expiring due to chemical exposure testing. The LD50 amounts are generally recorded on the SDS as that lethal dosage injection amount in milligrams, as it related to the animal's recorded body weight in kilograms. Or as LC50 on the SDS, it's recorded as the ppm of chemical vapor over the reference amount of time that resulted in the expiration of the animals in the test group. GHS, 6 elements required on chemical labels. Product identifier. Pictogram. Signal word. Hazard statement. Precautionary statement. Manufacturer supplier contact information. Chemical labels must be printed in English. Alternate languages can be added to label, but must contain same 6 label elements. Label. Product identifier. Product identifier means the name or number used for a hazardous chemical on a label or in the SDS. It provides a unique means by which the user can identify the chemical. The product identifier used shall permit cross-references to be made among the list of hazardous chemicals required in the written hazard communication program, the label and the SDS. Also required under product identifier, it must include supplier contact information. Labels, signal words. Danger or warning are signal words used to emphasize the potential level of hazard the chemical poses from either a physical, health, or environmental hazard perspective. Danger represents greater hazard than warning. Must be on product label. See hazard statement on Section 2 of SDS for more specific hazard information. Labels, hazard statement. Hazard statement means a statement assigned to a hazard class and category that describes the nature of the hazard of a chemical, including, where appropriate, the degree of hazard. There are specific hazard statements that must appear on the label based on the chemical hazard classification. Examples: highly flammable liquid and vapor. Causes severe skin burns. May cause cancer. Fatal if swallowed. Label. Precautionary statements. Precautionary statement means a phrase or phrases that describes recommended measures that should be taken to minimize or prevent adverse effects resulting from exposure to a hazardous chemical, or improper storage or handling. This is an example for the new format of GHS labels. Please observe this example and notice there are 6 new label element requirements that must be displayed on chemical labels. Please also notice where each label element of information is located on the chemical labels. Identity. Signal word. Pictograms. Hazard statements. Precautionary statements. Manufacturer or distributor information. Portable workplace container labeling requirements. Hazardous chemicals transferred from the original labeled container to a secondary container or any portable container prepared on site for internal use will require labels meeting one of the following options. Option 1. A GHS label that includes same information from original product label. Option 2. Or develop a container label with any combination of words, pictures or symbols that communicates the hazards and does not conflict with GHS information. The Hazard Communication Standard revised in 2012 requires chemical manufacturers, distributors, or importers to provide safety data sheets, formerly known as Material Safety Data Sheets or MSDS, for each hazardous chemical, to downstream users so as to communicate and provide complete hazard information as it relates to the potential chemical hazards. The new SDS format requires 16 sections of uniform information. All information contained on the SDS must be printed in English, with other languages optional. Role of Safety Data Sheet. The SDS provides comprehensive information about a chemical substance or mixture. Employers and workers use the SDS as a source of information about chemical hazards and to obtain advice on what safety precautions to follow. Employers must ensure that SDSs are kept up to date, maintained in the workplace and readily accessible to employees at all times. Sections 1 to 5 contains general information about the chemical. Identification includes product identifier, manufacturer or distributor name, address, phone number, emergency phone number, recommended use, restrictions on use. Section 2, hazard identification includes all hazards regarding the chemical. Required label elements. Section 3, composition information on ingredients, includes information on chemical ingredients. Trade secret claims. Section 4, first aid measures includes important symptoms, effects, acute, delayed. Required treatment. Section 5, firefighting measures lists suitable extinguishing. This information should be helpful to those that need to get information quickly. Section 6 to 7 provides recommendations on the appropriate response to chemical spills, leaks or releases, as well as guidance on the safe handling practices and conditions for safe storage of chemicals, which will include information about what incompatible chemicals to avoid contact with as well. Very important to read and understand Section 8. Section 8 is where you'll find information regarding what, if any, personal protective equipment to use and wear for safety protection when working with a specific chemical. Also, under this section, it will indicate what appropriate engineering controls to follow, like the need for any special ventilation equipment to help exhaust harmful chemical vapors or gases while working with the chemical product. Also, Section 8 identifies what the 8-hour TWA safe exposure levels, PELs, TLVs, are for workers, which are not to be exceeded in an 8-hour workday.